Hello everyone, Carnassa here, and welcome back to Coming Home Redux. And my oh my, is that a sentence that I have not said in the longest of times. Obviously, before Christmas, well, I had a lot of uni work that I needed to do, and then just before my semester finished, my graphics card decides to go and break. Really not the best of timing. Obviously, I have since replaced that. I am now rocking a 3070 Ti, which is glorious, and it means that I can play Kerbal Space Program again and start filming my series, which is something that I have wanted to do for all over the Christmas period because I had pretty much nothing to do. I didn't even have exams in January or assignments or anything. I had nothing. I had nothing going on, and GPU said no. Anyway, because it has been such a long time since doing one of these episodes, I think I am going to give a bit of a quick recap at the start of this. Whilst we see these 4 fuel reserve resupply missions going to fuel up the big interplanetary vessel. Anyway, so far in the Coming Home Redux series, what we have done, we have gone to Gateway, we have landed on every moon of Gateway, we've gone to Saith, and we have gone to Hydrus, all with uncrewed vessels. Yeah, uncrewed, all uncrewed. We've not left the road system with crew yet. We have landed on all of the moons around the road system with crew, so yeah, that's about the extent of our crewed program at the moment, but that's all going to change in this episode. Obviously, we are going to be sending this massive interplanetary vessel out to, well, I decided to go for rock, which is actually a really silly idea. One thing as well that I'm noticing now on the screen, you can see Principia is up at this section of the video because I filmed this before my GPU died. I filmed this quite a long time ago, and this is when I still had Principia on the Coming Home save. I have since removed that because it was making everything run super duper slow, and when I've got these massive interplanetary craft in orbit, going to them and then the game running at about 5 frames per second, 5 frames per second, wasn't exactly fun. So I decided to remove it. The whole aim of this series was more to colonize and build grand structures in space and go all over the system, not to worry about end-body physics. We still have kept the rescale though, so obviously Delta V requirements are going to be much larger than they are in stock. Well, stock-ish, BeyondHome. It's not stock because it's a different planet pack. But yeah, no. Delta V requirements are still going to be huge, so they have not changed in the slightest, which is it's proving pretty difficult. Anyway, this episode we are going to be going to Rock. We're going to send a crew. And what I have done is I've actually already filmed the next 3 or 4 episodes because they all happen at the same time as this one. Rather than showing you kind of like little tidbits here and there of every mission that's going on and kind of like interrupt them with other missions, what I've decided to go for upon coming back to the series is just focus on kind of like one mission at a time. And in this episode, we're going to be focusing on this rather large crewed vessel. The next episode, we're going to go and visit Hydrus, Rock again, and Vasto, which is the furthest planet in the BeyondHome planet pack, if you don't include all of the ones around Kerbal. And then in the final episode, we're going to be sending a massive, a ginormous, a quite frankly ridiculous mission to Hydrus. It is going to be uncrewed, but it's going to have absolutely everything you could ever want from a mission, except for a couple of Kerbals. Yeah, they've all been filmed. I have got to edit them, so it will take a while for those to still come out, but hopefully they should be coming out over the course of the next week. And I think I'm going to change my style of how I do things to better fit that. What I will do is I will bulk record a load of stuff, then I will bulk edit a load of stuff, and then I will come down and sit and do these voiceovers at a later date. And hopefully it means that I should be able to keep fairly consistent uploads with the channel. Anyway, talking about what's going on the screen at the moment, yes, we are refueling the vessel. We were successful with all 4 of the refueling missions, and now we are just doing the final little part of this, which is bringing down these boosters. Funnily enough, the 2 that landed in the day survived. The 2 that landed at night, yeah, they died. Anyway, with that being all done, that craft is now ready to go on its interplanetary adventure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to the RSSI, which was our first ever space station that we put up around Rhode. It's got a crew on there, and I'm going to return them to the surface, because to be honest, that space station, it's a little bit defunct now. It's not really got anything that I want to do from it. trap or odor or whatever you want to call it is much better suited for creating craft in space. The RSSI is just a little bit redundant. So in order to save me the headache of keep coming back to that space station to make sure that there are enough supplies, electric charge, all that kind of nonsense, well, we're just going to bring the crew back home on the crew buzzard that we sent them up on. So you may have been able to tell the descent through the atmosphere was a little bit wobbly with this. Yes, the crew or cargo buzzard, it's showing its age. It's not doing particularly well anymore. No, it's definitely time for an upgrade, and we will be looking at an upgraded version of this later on in this episode. But yes, it's quite scary, if I'm going to be honest. Coming down and the craft flipping all over the place, it's going to end up with a death if I'm not careful. Luckily, that hasn't happened yet, which I'm really surprised about, because in the old Coming Home, I killed everyone. No one was safe, but no, we've not killed anyone yet, thankfully. Anyway, we are, as I'm talking about this, we are launching another one of them. I honestly, I don't know why I did this. I should have just gone in the VAB and decided something a little bit better before launching the crew up to the interplanetary vessel, but I was a little bit impatient. I wanted to get this done. I wanted to get all this video, the film footage filmed and just, crack on with it. So I decided not to go into the VAB and test a load of new designs, because that takes a long time. Decided just to use what I've got already. This thing is more than capable of getting us to orbit just fine, and there you go, we can see the ginormous interplanetary vessel just like screaming past because my rendezvous, well, I started my burn a little bit too late, but we are able to get to the craft anyway, with Ziggy Kerman III, Maximus Kerman, and Kerman on board. There is another couple of Kerbals on board as well. I can't remember who they are. We'll see them momentarily, though. So the reason why I've got another couple of Kerbals on is because obviously Ziggy Kerman, Maximus Kerman, and Kerman are going to be the three Kerbals that we are going to send off into the deep vastness of space all the way over to Rock. And what we will do is we will leave two Kerbals on board the cargo buzzard. I think it's a cargo buzzard, which obviously can take crew as well. And then they will fly the plane back to the surface of road and everything will be gravy. Everything will be absolutely fantastic. But there we go. We can see we are moving them across using Ship Manifest, yes. I forgot the name of that mod for a second. There we go. Sticker Kerman and Tuck Kerman are our two Kerbals that are going to return to the safety of road, or you might think the safety of road. Remember, once again, I did just mention that this thing is a little bit of a death trap to fly once we get into the atmosphere. Yes, it starts pitching uncontrollably, and I think, if I recall correctly, once again, I do lose a little bit of control, or maybe I'm thinking, oh, there we go, look at that spin! It's amazing, but fortunately, once again, no, we don't lose anyone, and we do get rather close to the space center. Actually, no, we don't land at the space center. I remember what I did here. We land just shy of it. There you go. You can see it over there. And me being a little bit of a masochist, I thought, well, we wanna. this counts as a runway, a runway landing, right? Yeah, this counts as a runway landing. What we're gonna do is we're gonna drive it the rest of the way. This is obviously sped up to about 20 times speed. It took quite a while, but there we go. In front of the hangar. So yes, that was rather annoying, but luckily I did manage to hit record for at least the final few burns that we are going to be performing with the Star Needle, thanks to Jonas Lidstrom for the name from the last episode, that is going to send us all the way over to Rock. And one thing about the burns that I'm doing at the moment, you can see that I've got them up on the nav ball. Those times are incorrect, and I did not realize this at the time. Because I have got the engine for the lander of the interplanetary vessel staged with the 4 atomic engines, it's counting the thrust from that in my burn time, even though the engine is not activated, which means that the burn time that it's giving me is a lot shorter than it should be. And because of this, I was a little bit confused because I wasn't, well, I was burning and it wasn't doing what it should have been doing because of that. But with multiple passes of road, we are able to get ourselves on our way to Rock. It just took a very long time. And the reason why I wanted to do multiple passes, obviously the engines on this vessel, we've got 4 trimodal atomic rocket engines. I can't remember what mod they're from, but they're very good. Their specific impulse in vacuum is 950 seconds, but the thrust on them is absolutely terrible. I think it's about 67 kilonewtons. It might be a little bit more. But when we're moving something as large as this ginormous interplanetary vessel, well, yes, it takes an awful long time. And what I did there was I actually overburned ever so slightly, because obviously I wasn't paying attention. I can't have been paying attention, because I saw, when I was putting this footage together, I saw our maneuver, I saw our course fly straight over rock. It was, yeah, obviously I must have been watching a film or something on my second screen. I tend to do that when I'm doing all of these burns, because 30-minute long burns, what are you going to do? Yes, over 1 year later. It took a very long time to get to Rock. I think I did mention it, but Rock was a bit of a silly destination to go. The reason why I decided to go there rather than anywhere else is because Rock was the first transfer window that we actually had available to us. And because I was very impatient, I was like, yes, let's just go Rock. It seems like a good destination. It doesn't matter that we need like nearly 7,000 meters per second of delta V to perform a landing, which I have found out since. Yeah, so we are not going to be landing on Rock or anything like that. So what I was looking at there is I obviously deep froze my Kerbals on the way over to Rock to save us using all of the supplies and everything on the vessel. If we froze them, then we could just eat our food when we're there. We don't have to worry about them until we actually get to our destination. Unfortunately, deep freeze for some reason was not working properly. When I got the vessel there, they were not to be found. The Kerbals that we had frozen in those cryopods, they had blinked out of existence, and I don't know what was causing that. So what I went and did, I went into the persistent save file and I re-edited those Kerbals back into the ship because they should have been there. I had enough electric charge to keep them sustained for the entire journey because we are running like 3 nuclear reactors on this craft, which are providing, I think, about 300 electric charge per second. So we had more than enough electric charge to keep those safe. I honestly don't know what was going on. What we are doing now is we are just changing our inclination so that we're roughly equatorial around Rock, because that way, when we are going to decide to leave to return back to road, which we will be doing in this episode, well, it's going to be a lot easier to plot out our maneuver. But there we go, a nice close-up view of Rock. We are going to burn our engine. So we're going to perform multiple burns to capture us into a nice low orbit around Rock. But the first one, of course, has to actually capture us. So this is the very important burn. If we miss this, we go flinging back off into interplanetary space. But luckily, even though, as I mentioned before, the thrust-to-weight ratio on these engines are pretty abysmal, we were able to capture after one burn. And now what we're going to do is just repeat that. I didn't forget to record this time so we can see every single one of these passes that I do. I'm going to miss out the last 2 because, to be honest, it's just watching the same thing over and over and over again. And I think it was about this point that I realized, well, look at our orbital speed. We're going like 4,000 meters per second at the moment. Obviously, we're not in a nice tight orbit yet, but the lander only has 3,600 meters per second. We're not going to be able to attempt a landing on Rock at all. And actually, since doing this, I have tried to perform another landing on Rock, and that craft had about 6,000 meters per second of delta V, and it still does not work. You need an insane amount, because Rock spins very, very, very fast, I think. And it's so large, the gravity losses are astronomical. It's going to be really difficult performing a landing on the surface and then returning to orbit. But we were able to capture into a nice low orbit. And what I did at this point is I went off and did some of the other missions that I spoke about earlier on in the episode. And I came back to this to get to the science lab and transmit all the science. And what I realized is actually we have a transfer window back home already. After spending only 30 days in orbit of Rock, we are able to go back home. And I thought, well, we're not going to be performing any landings. Rock doesn't have a moon or anything like that, so we might as well just get these Kerbals back safely. Because they have been on this craft for about a year already. I know the mission timer says a year and 344 days, but part of that timer is when the craft was built and waiting for a crew to be sent up to it. But I decided for the burn back to road, we're going to just do this all in one go, because I'm getting pretty bored of doing repeated passes. And there you go, we can see we have managed to get ourselves a nice close encounter with road, only about 1 million meters away. We do not have enough fuel left on the craft to capture. And I knew this as I was performing the burn to leave rock. What I am going to be doing is once we get to rock, let me kind of break this down. I was thinking of leaving the lander around orbit of rock, because that's just extra dead weight that we're not going to use. But then I thought, actually, no. What we can do is we can detach the lander from the main interplanetary vessel once we get to road, which we are at now, and then we can use the lander to get ourselves in a nice low orbit around road, making it much easier to pick up the Kerbals and bring them safely back down. However, one problem with this is I also want to capture the main vessel too. So what I'm doing here now is plotting a maneuver not at the periaps of road, because I can't do that, because I can't burn both of these craft at the same time. So what we're going to do is we are going to burn the main interplanetary vessel first, because that is the one that's going to take the longest time, 5 minutes and 31 seconds, and we are using absolutely all of our fuel for this burn. Like, we're going to be left with 7 meters per second of delta V if the maneuver is correct. And actually, halfway through this maneuver, because we're not burning exactly retrograde, well, it does start to say that we are going to run out of fuel before we complete the burn. And this was pretty much at the fringe of Rhodes' orbit. The maneuver that I plotted out, it's super tight whether this vessel actually flings off into interplanetary space or if we manage to capture it around road. There we go. We can see the burn time is starting to go red, indicating that we don't have enough fuel to complete this burn. But luckily, with a nice assist from Ash, we were able to capture. And now, 5 minutes later, we immediately swap over to the lander, and we are going to bring that down nice and safely. This was much easier to bring down, because the thrust to weight ratio on the Poodle engine, it's not the Poodle engine, no, it is the Poodle engine, the 2.5 meter vacuum optimized engine from stock. Yeah. It's got a much higher thrust to weight ratio than the atomic engines that we have on the main interplanetary vessel, so that makes this rather simple. We still have to do a couple of passes, because obviously we weren't burning at periaps around road, so in order to get us a nice circular orbit that's going to be a lot easier for when we send up a craft to rendezvous with this and bring Maximus Kerman and Ziggy Kerman III back home, well, yeah, no, that'll be a lot nicer if we do have a circular orbit. Now, I know there were 3 Kerbals that went to rock, and we've only got 2 in this craft. Once again, I did put Kerman in a deep freeze chamber, and he disappeared. He disappeared yet again, so I decided, rather than editing the save file, I just wanted to get this mission done. I'm just going to use the 2 that weren't deep frozen, and Kerman will be fine. I can unfreeze him, I can thaw him, and he will just return to the astronaut center. There shouldn't be anything wrong with it, but I just didn't want to go editing the save file again for something that really wasn't that important. Anyway, what we're doing now is we are launching a mission that is going to recover those 2 Kerbals. And what we have got here is the cargo drones that I developed a couple of episodes ago, the Mantas. Except I have changed the cockpit of these. They're no longer drones. We are now capable of taking crew up in these, and each one of these can take 4 Kerbals. The cockpit itself can take 2, and there is a habitation module inside of the cargo bay that will be able to, what will it be able to do? Hold 2 Kerbals, yes. Had to think about that for a second. But we are going to try and recover the upper booster. We do manage to bring it down safely with parachutes, but we do lose the nose cone because I pitched a little bit too aggressively down when we were coming through the worst parts of the atmosphere to try and get as close to the Space Center as possible. We were quite close, but unfortunately not a runway landing this time. Anyway, we are going to return to one of the crew Mantas, and we can see that we have already performed our rendezvous with, quite frankly, the really small looking lander. Compare this to the size of the Manta, which I didn't think was actually that big. Well, it looks tiny. It's really small. So we're just going to perform a docking, lovely stuff, and then what we have on the crew manta is a little experiment holder, so we're going to transfer all of the experiments over into that, and then of course we are going to get Ziggy Kerman III, and we are going to get Maximus Kerman across to the manta, and we are going to fly this back home, after getting rather aggressively bonked by the lander as we undocked. Not sure what happened there, but yes, it was a little bit weird. So, disclaimer about this manta. Obviously, the cargo manta, the drone manta, that flies like an absolute dream. And I thought, well, if I just change the cockpit around, it's not really going to do much to the vessel. It should be fine. We still should be able to fly this as we can with those cargo drones. And I didn't test this, which is something really silly. This is a surefire way of killing Ziggy Kerman III again. But, to be honest, the plane flies like a dream. It's wonderful. This design is actually amazing to bring back through the atmosphere of Rhode. The cargo variant, the drone variant, and now this new crewed variant, it really flies incredibly well. And you can see we are now approaching the Space Center. And this time we are going to run. We're going to land on the runway. Why can't I say that word today? We are going to perform a runway landing, which is always nice. There it is. We have got our landing gear deployed, and one thing, I think, about this vehicle that I forgot to add was a front wheel. Yeah. We tip on our nose and I try and fix that, and we end up performing a little bit of a wheelie with this space plane. That is something that I am going to have to change, but that will happen in a future episode, because for now we have recovered the mission. We've gone to Rock and we have returned, and we have gained 3,215 science from this mission, which is an awful lot. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into research and development and unlock some very cool new nuclear engines. The first engine that I will be unlocking from the Far Future Technologies mod, which is the pulsed fission engine. And I think I'm going to be doing a live stream where I start thinking about designs for that shortly. But until then, I have been Karnasa, and I will see you later.